Hi, good morning. It is a great Monday here at Lambert. We're going to do Beliefs in Public Opinion Part 2. So it'll be two parts, 2A and 2B. Um, so they'll be a little bit shorter, hopefully about 7 or 8 minutes each. And then, as you'll see as I write up for the rest of the week, there'll be a quiz on this stuff plus what we did last week in the midweek, and then we'll move along after that. So, beliefs in public opinion. We're talking about polling here. That's what this is all about, both part 2A and B. So, polling, really quick, how they are conducted. They're done with a sample. So, what is a sample? A relatively small portion of the population chosen as representatives of the whole. You cannot ask everybody, so you got to have a sample. If it's done correctly, in the United States, say about 1,000 to 1,500 people can accurately represent the entire population, or at least the entire voting population. Let's put it that way. That seems like a small number, but if it's done correctly and scientifically, it's pretty good. What's the key then to doing this? It has to be a random sample. Some of this will be a little bit statistics. If you've taken statistics, some of this stuff will sound a little bit familiar. So random sampling. Everyone should have an equal probability of being selected. That's the idea. Okay, so polling, though, of course, is an estimation because the sample will never be 100% accurate. So that's the way we have to go. And we use this thing called a sampling error or a margin of error. That's usually what you'll see when you look at a poll. When you consume a poll, you will see it should say MOE, and that is a key thing to look for. It's the level of confidence in the findings of the poll. The more people are interviewed, the more it's done scientifically, the more confidence there is in the poll. So the margin of error will be less. Typical poll of say 1,500 people. If you're doing a national level poll of registered or likely voters in the country, the typical error in that will be plus or minus 3%. That would be the MOE. And you have to know that when you're looking at polls to intelligently consume them. So what does that mean? That means, and this is as statistical as we get in this part of the unit, 95% of the time, the poll will be within 3% of what the population thinks. That's what plus or minus 3% margin of error means. 95% of the time, it'll be there. That means that other 5% is going to be an outlier somewhere. And you never know which one it is, and that's the problem. Sorry, I had to stop there for a second. So what to look for then? If you're going to intelligently consume a poll, you have to look for things. The type of people polled affects the accuracy. We're going to talk about three different groups as far as levels of accuracy. The highest level of accuracy would be likely voters, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And the pollsters ask these questions as you're doing a poll, if you've ever done one for a political election or something like that. They will ask you questions to determine if you're a likely voter. They'll say, they'll ask you, have you voted in the last three presidential elections? If you say yes, they'll probably call you a likely voter. If you say no, they won't call you a likely voter. And they'll ask other questions to determine those things too. The middle is so the next level in accuracy would be registered voters. And then the last one is adults. That is virtually meaningless poll. Okay, if they're polling adults about a political campaign, that poll's not worth very much at all because who knows who there's going to be. All right, the number of people polled is also very important. The margin of error, we already talked about that. The geographic area, you got to know, is it a national poll? Is it a poll of Georgia? Is it a poll of New England or something like that? That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of difference. And we'll talk about this later, a little bit about question wording, and a little bit later we'll talk about the bandwagon effect. So all those things have to be thought about when you're consuming and intelligently consuming a poll. And so to get that, how do we get a proper sampling technique? It has to be, we do it by telephone. This has limitations we'll talk about in a second. It's called random digit dialing. So it has to be random. Remember, a random sample. Listed and unlisted numbers. I don't even know if they do unlisted numbers anymore. There used to be a big thing for unlisted numbers, but it is what it is. So what are the disadvantages here? Disadvantages are some people don't have phones, believe it or not. Some people do not have them. With caller ID, and especially on your cell phones now, and cell phones are an issue here too, because they used to not call cell phones. Now they've added those in, as some of you may have gotten polls in this last election cycle. Because you know what you do when you see a number you don't know, click it. I'm not answering that. Or you answer it and you go, hi, I'm from so and so and I want to do a poll. You go, nah, no, thank you, and off you go. So things like that make this harder to do. Cell phones, again, they didn't have them they didn't have them included when cell phones were coming, like say in the mid to 2000s, so 2000 to 2010. They didn't call cell phones. Okay, they still just called landlines. So cell phones they've added into it, so it's helped a little bit. And then waiting. Polls have to be adjusted no matter who you ask. If you're doing a poll and you randomly happen to get, because you ask other things like, what political party you are, or what your ideology is, or what have you, they will put that in there. And if you happen to get, say 60% of the people who did your poll were Democrats, you're going to have to make an adjustment because 60% of the electorate is not Democrats. Okay, you're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to weight it for demographics. So they do that as well, what they think the electorate is going to look like. And that's a scientific thing, but it's also sort of a scientific guess. So too many of one type or another will create an inaccurate poll. All right. So what are the problems with polling? Number one, people don't know anything in general, right? Do we have an informed public? Yeah, probably not. If you're going to do a poll on, say, a foreign policy issue or something like that, people aren't going to know. People don't know economics. People don't know stuff like that. People don't know that if you actually raise the minimum wage, jobs are lost. People don't know that because it sounds so good. Hey, are you in foreign policy? Hey, should we raise the minimum wage? Yeah, that'd be great. People are going to lose their jobs. Wait a minute. But people don't know that. So that's a problem. Question framing, the way they ask the question. Questions can be leading. If you ask a question a certain way, you're going to get a certain answer. In person, on paper, or on the phone, things are a little bit different there. If you're in front of a person, if you're on the phone, or if you're doing it on paper by yourself, you may answer somewhat differently. And there are these things called push polls. Push polls are polls designed to push you in one direction or another. We'll talk about those in a little bit as well. Again, here. Polls with ulterior motives, usually done by campaigns or supporters. Say a push poll. Say you get maybe it's in a big primary, and I remember getting one in the big Republican primary for Senate in Georgia. Actually it was the special election, and you get polls and things. And I'm using this as an example. This is not what I got, but this has happened. So candidate X is the one authorizing the poll, and they want to make you think negatively about candidate B. Okay, so they might say, and this didn't happen, but this has happened in the past in other places. So they ask questions, what do you think about this? What do you think about this person? What do you think about this person? So what do you think about candidate B? And I have a decent opinion of candidate B. And then you go, would your opinion change for candidate B if you found out that they were convicted of domestic abuse in the past? Keep in mind, candidate B was not. But it's designed to push you away from candidate B and push you toward candidate X. So very nefarious those things are, and they can be done. So you have to be careful about those. And again, so attempts to push people one way or another. The internet is also an issue because it's self-selecting. If you want to do a poll, hey, a poll comes along on the internet. Yeah, I'll take that one. Okay, that's self-selecting. That is not random. That has nothing to do with being able to accurately do a poll. Say if you're on a liberal website after a debate between Biden and Trump last October or whatever. So, and you're on a liberal website and say, who do you think won the debate? And everyone's going to go, 98-2, Biden wins the debate. Look at that, Biden won the debate. No, it was a self-selecting silly poll. Okay, you can't go by those things. You have to be very careful what you are consuming. Okay, and the internet, again, they're difficult to limit, and you don't get a good cross section. Okay, the last one for part A today, exit polls. Those are actual polls which take place when a person leaves their voting precinct. Those are in person. Person leaves, and you'll have people there going, who did you vote for? Why'd you vote for this person? And they use demographics and all sorts of things to come up with lots and lots of information to determine things that went on in the election. However, one of the problems with them is they're used to project winners very early, and that caused serious issues a couple of times because it's gone terribly wrong in the past. The exit polling in 2004 showed that Kerry won. In fact, between 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening, the Kerry campaign were popping their champagne corks. They thought they won because the exit polling, which was wrong, obviously, because we don't have a President Kerry, that he had won, and he didn't, because the exit polling was terrible. They did a very poor job of exit polling. It also probably screwed up the network projections for Florida in 2000. Back in 2000, this was the one with the Bush v. Gore, when they projected early in the night that Bush had won Florida. Then I think somewhere around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they pulled that back and said, no, we didn't do that. Then later, I remember right before we went to bed, Florida, no, Gore won Florida. When I woke up, no, they had pulled that back, and nobody knew who won Florida. Man, part of the problem was some of those exit polling. And it turned out, of course, it took a long time, right up to the end, just like this last one took right up to the end before the Electoral College. And then Bush won by some 500-ish votes or something like that. So things like that can be a problem. And changes have been made. There's less exit polling. There's less companies doing it. The problem is there's less data available. When it's done right, it's very, very valuable, but there's less data available now. So that's it for this part. We're going to talk about the role polls play. That's really what the next half is about. So I'll see you over there.